says 19 Tammuz. Is it here? Where it says 19 Tammuz, 0 voice.
Chapter 7. Language of Zohar.
We're not.
4-letter meaning. This is going to be fun. Oh, wow.
No, that's our.
Tshuva. Nasty words.
Welcome back, folks. We've been away for a bit.
For tshuva.
We're learning Tanya. We have some things to catch up on. So we're going to catch up on it. On our daily learning. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Yesterday, a grandson, bris, circumcision. We have a new Yosef Yitzchak. Yosef Yitzchak is the name of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. And our grandson was born the day before his birthday. And the day before, because on his birthday is when he was released from prison in 1927, when he was arrested by the communists for the horrific crime of believing in God and spreading the belief in God, amongst fellow Jewish adherents. And yeah, he was released from prison on that same day of his birthday. You basic Gimel. And so grandson named after him. Also has a couple of grandparents, great-grandparents. One has the name Yitzchak, another one has Yosef. So, got to get some great-grandparents into the mix too, which is wonderful,
Beautiful.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
To be remembered.
So we traveled from Simcha to Simcha in Atlanta for joyous occasions over there with grandchildren.
You were here for the birth, right?
Yeah. Here for the birth, left the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and came back just in time.
And Atlanta?
And in Atlanta, we had an upchurnish for a 3-year-old boy and 2 baby girls that were born.
Wow.
One a couple of weeks ago and one a few months ago. So lots of joyous occasions, and we should only celebrate joyous occasions. Only Simcha is only Yiddish Chassidish Nachas. Yeah, absolutely. How blessed. Folks, open up our eyes and see the blessings that God has given. Everybody has blessings in their lives. We just have to open up our eyes and see them. We shouldn't look at someone else's blessings and say, "Oh, why wasn't I blessed with that?" We should open up our eyes and see with what we were blessed with.
Consider a blessing a miracle?
All blessings are miraculous. Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We continue in our journey in Igeres HaTshuva, in understanding the concept of tshuva, penitence, of connection, reconnection. Right? When we fail. Fail, we will fail. The question is what happens afterwards. Do we get up? Do we fix what we need to fix? Do we mend what's needed to be mended? Or do we feel a victim of our circumstance? And therefore, we just point a finger elsewhere. Right? Good question.
Be honest with you.
Yeah. Good question. So, what we explained is that the divine soul is a part of God. And being that it's a part of God, right? And that's the metaphor of blowing. When you blow into a balloon, you have the breath of the person in the balloon. When you have the breath of God in us, in our very soul, that God breathed it into being and breathed it into us.
Yeah.
And that's where the metaphor comes from. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. And second, just looking. So that's what makes up who we are. That's what defines us. God's name. Yud and He and Vav and He, right? God's name. Shem Havaya, the tetragrammaton. That's what it creates the divine soul that's breathed within us, that gives us our identity, gives us our true being, gives us ultimately life.
The breath of the word.
The breath is the part of God. The word is the way it then enters into the body, right? Into the body. So, as opposed to everything else in creation, the breath of God is not within creation. It's the word of God only, right? For the sake of the metaphor, right? Now, if you do a sin cuts you off from God. Well, now we can understand. How do you get cut off from God if God is everywhere? You know how? Because if your vitality is coming from his breath rather than his word, I'm creating a barrier right now, but the word gets through the barrier, right? How come?
Not the breath.
How come? Because the barrier is not a barrier for the word of God. But the breath of God, again, metaphorically, is a barrier. And it doesn't come to its intended destination. That's what sin does. Sin creates that barrier that doesn't allow the breath of God to come to the place where it needs to come to give life. Therefore, when you sin, or you do a sin that will bring you to being cut off from God, from the hands of heaven, you'll be cut off from God. At an early age, a person would die because of a certain grievous sin. Or if there are many sins, so our attachment to God is like a rope that has 613 strands. Each mitzvah is a strand, and if you cut off many of them, then it weaken the rope, and finally it's going to tear, right? Just follow the yellow brick road. Okay. So in the times of the Holy Temple, just in your mind, don't go anywhere. Because when you're going in your mind, then you miss. You're going to miss.
Thank you for reminding me.
Okay. So in the times of the Holy Temple, where you got your vitality direct from God, and that's what it means, the Holy Land, where the presence of God was palpable and real, you only could get it direct from godliness. And therefore, a sin could cut you off, or multiple sins could cut you off as a result. Okay? That's in the times of when God's presence is clear, palpable, and real. Meaning to say that the vitality that the Jew would get is direct from God, right? The breath through the divine soul, because the divine presence is present in the land. And therefore, you're getting it direct from God. And therefore, now to give a metaphor for this, right? We learn about Moses. He's told that he can't go into the land of Israel for seemingly a very small, he gets cut off, right? Because God is so present in his life, so palpable and real, the smallest minute little thing that he does cuts him off. Similar to, I was with grandchildren, and a 3-year-old, 2-year-old can say crazy things, whatever. Doesn't need to be repeated. And sometimes they say crazy things, you might smile at it. Probably better not to, but you might. But if an adult said the same thing, they'd be like shocked. And you would feel a barrier that would cut you off from that person if they would make the same kind of comment, right? Expecting more. By Moses, you're expecting more. So small little thing hits the rock, doesn't talk to the rock, right? Gets him cut off from going into the land of Israel. Because by him, the presence of God is so palpable and so real that a small little thing is cut off. By the rest of the Jewish people. It's not the same thing. Right? So that is, in a holy environment, what happens. But chapter 7 now goes into a different understanding. All of that was in time when God's presence was palpable and real in the holy temple and the Beis Hamikdash. We lived in an elevated manner that the body got its vitality direct from the divine soul, the innermost source of divinity, from God, from Tetragrammaton, from the Word, from God Himself, from the breath of God, not from the Word. And therefore the breath didn't reach, because if you did something, you cut yourself off from the name of God, right? But that's not the state of life that we live in now, in what we call exile, a time of Golus. The presence of God is in exile. God is impalpable and real in the world that we live in today, right? Which that itself needs to be understood, because, hey, how's that possible? What do you mean God, his presence is in exile? Yes, it is. It's a mystery, right? But so it is. How? Through your sins was your mother banished. Who's your mother? What's the metaphor, mother?
Israel.
Our Sanda's mother is.
Mother is the divine presence, right? The Shekhinah is another name for it, or the queen, or the revealed world, right? All of that is Shekhinah, divine presence, exactly. Is in exile, huh?
Because the temple was destroyed.
Temple's destroyed, so it's in exile, exactly. So what is the name of God? So what does it mean that what's an exile? The Shekhinah. What's the Shekhinah? What's Shekhinah? Malchus, right? What's Malchus? It's king. It's king, but what's Malchus? What's Malchus? The word of God, the breath of God, right? As the king rules with his word, right? That refers to the word of God, meaning the presence of God is in his word that he creates with, is now in exile. The breath is in exile, right? Malchus is in exile. What is that in God's name? The latter hey in the Tetragrammaton, right? This is Malchus. This is Chochmah, this is Bina, this is 6 emotions, and this is Malchus. We have the 10 divine attributes, right, in God's name. That's right there. We have 10 powers of our soul that was blown into us, that we have a piece of God in us, right? So Malchus, the latter hey in God's name, has fallen off his name, so to speak, Where did it go? Where'd it go? Shemayim. Shemayim would be heavens. It went into the Golus exile. What does exile mean? Klipa. God's name is not Klipa, it's holiness. Klipa went into a shell, and that's what exile means. Exile means that the presence of God is covered over, just as the shell that covers the nut, or the shell, the klipa that covers the fruit, right? So it went into exile that is now hidden by the exterior shell. And where do we get our life force from now? Klipa. We don't get it directly from holiness, as was in the Holy Land in the time when the holiness of God was present in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Holy Temple. We don't get it directly anymore because the Hay in God's name is in exile, is imprisoned in that shell, and we're getting our vitality from Klipa. As everything does as an animal or as a blade of grass gets. We're getting it from there, right? And therefore, when somebody is sinful and deliberate transgressing, a Jew who deliberately transgresses, he's getting his vitality, as all other living creatures do, from Klipa, a negative force. And that's what it means in the verse that we are likened to a beast because we chose. And we're actually worse than the beast. Why? Because the beast doesn't have choice, and they're getting from Klipa because that's where they get their vitality from. But we have a choice, and therefore, because we made the wrong choice and doing something sinful, we're getting it from we're getting the worst of the Klipa. Right? We're getting the most of it because we chose it. Right? So what comes out now, in the times of the Holy Temple, you had no choice but to get from holiness. Now there's a choice. You can only get from holiness your vitality. Now the natural vitality is not from holiness. We're not we're not living through the holiness of God. That's where we're getting our normal vitality. We have to choose that. We have to choose it. Right?
Are we less holy?
We're less holy as a result. This is we're less holy in the function of our living, of our day in, day out, right? Our soul is the same as the soul was in times of the Holy Temple, the core of the soul. But the function of the soul is less holy because we're getting our vitality. By default, vitality is from klipa, from the shell that's covering over. By default, what was the vitality that you got in the times of the Holy Temple? From God's holiness, from the name of God, direct. We're not getting it direct because the hay fell off the name of God. That's what exile means. It's no longer direct.
You have free will in the temple?
It had free will, yeah. Because that's what you could sin and be cut off.
Even in the presence of Hashem. Okay.
It was harder, but you could still. So we have a choice either to derive our nurture from klipa, from sitaracha, from the negative side, right?
That's the essence of our free will, the choice. That's it.
But was there still the evil inclination?
Yes. It's always that. You mean in times of the Holy Temple? Yeah, of course. People sinned. But Um, can you sin in front of a holy person? Yes. It's less likely when you're in the presence of the Rebbe that you're going to sin. Could you? Of course you could. Right? And therefore it makes it even more, severe, the consequence. Right? When you're amongst a bunch of regular people and you do something sinful, well, regular people, you're not inspired, so you're going to be, right? You have to choose it more to be good. In front of all, when you're hanging out with just, great people, you could still choose to do wrong. It'll be less, and therefore more severe the consequence, and less likely will that happen as a general rule. But free will is not taken away. Okay,
So,
is that clear?
so we go back.
Exactly. Yep. So today we're in a situation where we have more of a choice to make. We're not as compelled as was in times of the Holy Temple. You were more compelled to do good because God's presence was more palpable. Today we're not as compelled, and therefore the choice is really ours. Where do we want to get our vitality from, right?
So because Hashem's foundation is in Klippa, when we make the right choices, follow Hashem to do to the fullest,
So
what happens in terms of you're shaping out vis-a-vis? It still remains the Klippa.
No, then we reveal it
But to us as individuals.
to us and in the world. To us, for sure, because if you do the mitzvah, so then you are taking the presence of God that's hidden and revealing it. Now, we're not revealing it as palpable as it would have been in the times of the Holy Temple, because the general world is still in Golus, is still in exile, right? So the general vitality is of Klippa. So it's not as palpable and real and experiential as it would have been in times of the Holy Temple. But the reality is the same, right? It's just that we're more desensitized because of the nature of the world that we live in. Does it make sense? Okay. Now, let's take this a step further now, what this means today. So the Torah says in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, in Parashat Vayakel, says that Jacob is a rope of God's heritage. Here's the rope. Right? So I have my soul the way it is rooted up here. Up here, it's in the Shekhinah. Up here, meaning not the way it's in my body, but I'm connected to my soul that's beyond my body, because my soul is not just limited to being in me. There's a part of my soul that is beyond me, right? That's rooted in its source. And that part, there's always the essence of it that is up here, right? But there's the soul up here, element of it that is beyond even this level, that always remains intact. But we're not talking about that now. Because, someone who's born a Jew or converts to become a Jew, they have a Jewish soul, period. You can never lose your Jewish soul, right? Even if you do whatever amount of sins. We're not talking about losing your identity or losing your soul. We're talking about the function of the soul, right? So there's a function of the soul the way it's rooted in its source, and a function of the soul the way it's in my body, right? We're talking about the functionality of it, not the fact that I have a soul. You never lose your soul. your Jewish soul, right? But the soul up here and the soul the way it's in my body, right? They're connected. The soul the way it is up here is where? In the Shekhinah, right? In the divine presence of God. But that's not the way it is in my body, not down here. Because down here, it's in klipa of the body, right? Dominated by a body, right? Not dominated by the presence of God down here. Got it? But they're connected, right? So up here, my soul is part of the Shekhinah, which is what? The Hay in God's name. So when I do a particular sin, what am I doing? I'm taking my soul and the body down here and acting in a sinful way. And what am I doing? I'm going down. I'm not going down like this, down a level. No, 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 no. I'm taking and pulling down. What am I pulling down? Not just the soul and the body coming down, but my soul that's rooted up in the Shekhinah, the Hay of God's name, is also coming down. And that's what we cause that through doing a sin that we draw God, the Shekhinah of God, that is, right? And not just you lose a connection,
Okay.
more than that. The soul, the way it's rooted up there in the Shekhinah, is also going into Klipa. We're causing it to go further into Klipa, right? In general, it is in Klipa because that's what exile means. But every particular sin, we're drawing down that part of the divine, which my soul is rooted up there, further into Klipa. Is that clear? And the greatest portion of that negativity is coming to the person, of course, that sinned. Right? But there's a difference now. Which, by the way, what does that mean? Just to appreciate the power in what we just said. God makes himself vulnerable to us. That we do something that is against God, we're affecting his divine presence. That's,
And are you saying that doing chupo replaces?
Oh, wait. Just let's take a step at a time. First, make sure we have clarity in this point. We're gonna get there. but don't jump the gun, because then we won't appreciate what this point over here. But yes, that's where we're going. That's where we're going. Okay. So that's what the sin causes. But then second. So what did we do? We took God's letter Hey in God's name, and we've pulled it down, affecting the divine presence of God, further bringing it into Klipa, right? Whether we spoke Lashon Hara, spoke ill, whether we did whatever kind of sin it might be, we do that. But then what's unique that we have the capability now is Tashuv Hey, to return the Hey. And that's what Tshuva is. That we have the capability of returning this Hey in God's name, in my soul, to return it to the right place, to reconnect it. right? That then the hay is returned, and I can give, and the vitality that I get will be directly from God's name, the Tetragrammaton, the Shem Havaya. The latter hay is Malchus. That's what fell, right?
Okay.
The rest of God's name didn't fall,
I didn't want to assume.
right?
Mhm.
It's just fall, meaning, in other words, it's God's kingship. Well, think about it also. God's kingship means what? His word, right, was not obeyed. His word, do this mitzvah, don't do that sin. It wasn't obeyed. So that word now that gives vitality, right? The word that gives, that's his inner desire that we do that. That's his word. So now the vitality is coming from Klippa because it's fallen from its place. God in that moment was not the king, right? He wasn't the king. But the difference is that now we have the capability of doing tshuva. Back in the times of the Holy Temple, think about it. Some people who are in a place of leadership, sometimes they do just one wrong thing. And if they assume responsibility properly, then they realize that's it, they're finished. Because that's what leadership means. One wrong thing, that's what happened to Moses, right? One wrong thing, finished.
Could you be more specific when you say they're finished? That means that they are cut off.
They're cut off from their role. They're cut off from their position, right?
Perhaps life as well too.
But yeah, I mean, I'm giving that as a metaphor. Leadership is a metaphor for what we're talking about over here, right? Here it's life, right? Here it's about vitality in the moment, right? So in times of the Holy Temple, we were all in leadership roles, so to speak. But if a private in the army makes a mistake, that doesn't mean he's kicked out of the army. The leader might be, because one mistake a leader makes could cause the death of many soldiers in the army, and for that he has, take full responsibility. And a proper leader does and realizes, right? Proper leaders.
That's depending on the single individual or collectively. Like
I'm using that as remember, it's a metaphor I'm using. Leadership is a metaphor over here. So look, let's not carry it away with the metaphor, right? I'm giving a metaphor to understand the difference between the times of the Holy Temple and today. Presence of God today. Great leaders take full responsibility. They do mess up one small thing that can wreak great havoc and great consequence. They're cut off. They themselves recognize it, right? And they recognize it, and they resign from their position, right? A private who makes a mistake in the army, he's not resigning from his position. Less is expected from him. He's not the general. He's not the one responsible for the entire army. So he made a mistake. That's the difference, right? He can make it up. He can make it up. Reprimanded, but he can make it up. He can do tshuva. I'm just giving that as a metaphor to understand the times of the Holy Temple, certain things you did, finished. You're cut off. You're cut off. There was no second chance sometimes. Sometimes there was no second chance, right? We see that with Moses. We see that with Saul the king, who did a mistake, cut off from his position as king, was taken away from him.
Genealogy.
Yeah, of course.
I'm private, not a king, not a leader.
Yeah, that's the metaphor we're giving. Yes, the times of Golus, we're like, so we can mess up, but we can still do tshuva. even for a serious mess up. That's the point. And wherefore we can tashuv hay, we can return the hay in God, in his presence, and into our soul. That's the important thing is. In order that the Shekhinah should be in its proper place, the divine presence, and we should get vitality directly from God through the choice that we make to do good, to do a mitzvah, right? We have that capability. This is the lower hay of tshuva, tata, the lower level of tshuva. And this is what the verse says in Deuteronomy. The Lord your God, the source of your soul, will return back with you when you return. Wow. You're doing tshuva, you're returning to God, but who's returning with you? God himself. God's, the Shekhinah, the divine presence. The hay in God's name is being returned. Is that powerful or what?
We're powerful.
That's how powerful we are, yes. We bring back God himself, his divine presence, through our tshuva. That's the power that God gives us. In the times when we're just a private, when we're just in a time of exile, where the presence of God is impalpable and isn't real, God gives us that power that we can return, that we can make good on our mistakes. Again, in times the Holy Temple was not the same. Not necessarily was that opportunity afforded.
What happened to them to them?
Or have early death if they did something severe, right? Any questions, any comments? Henya has a question. Is it correct to say that my soul is not mine, it's really God's because I am reincarnated to me in the physical world? Well, your soul is a piece of God, so it really belongs to God. By the way, yeah, which means we live in a world that says, well, it's my body and I have the right to do with whatever I want with my body. It's not your body, because your body is something that God gave to you. He creates it via the soul. And therefore, it's not yours, that you could choose to do whatever you want with it. Not your body, not your soul. Therefore, a person can't say, well, it's my life, and if I want to choose to end my life, I could end my life. No, you can't choose that. Or if I want to abort a life because it's my body and therefore I want to, no, it's not your choice, because it's not yours to make the choice about it. It's a God's. Our bodies are only on loan to us. So when you borrow a car from somebody, right? Could you do when you borrow a car from somebody, can you do anything you want with the car? No. Person tells you, don't smoke in the car. Don't eat in the car. Right? Don't whatever. Can you do? Now, you can do whatever you want, but there's going to be a consequence because of it. Right? There'll be a consequence as a result of it. So God is saying, I'm giving you a body, it's on loan, it belongs to me, because the soul is what animates it. And that soul is a part of me. So I'm telling you, this is how you deal with your soul, and this is how you deal with your body. And in the end, God gives us the choice to listen or not to listen, to make him the king, or to think that I'm the king and I'm in control. I'm the master. No, we're the servant to serve God. Thank you, Henya. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Aditya, that's a very good question. Saul didn't get a second chance, right? But David did. He did tshuva. How come he got a second chance? Excellent question. What's the difference? Saul did something that affected the entire, he did it as a king that affected the entire nation forever. Yeah. We have a Amalek to deal with, right? We have a Amalek to deal with, right? The Amalekis, the evil of the Amalekis. Seems like we're dealing with them today, right? Whether they're the reincarnation of them or not, I don't know, but right. So his effect was much was in a leadership role that there was no room for repentance for that leadership. You made a colossal mistake that affects for all time to come. You can't be king anymore, right? King David made a mistake too. But his mistake was on a personal level, not one that affected the entire nation as king. He's not going to lose his kingship because of a personal wrongdoing that was, by the way, very not so obvious. Like it was a very, it seems to us very obvious, but if you understand the deeper storyline, it's not so simple, but wrong yet, but personal wrongdoing that therefore he could do tshuva on. And yes, Patricia, correct. Saul had pride and David had humility because when Nathan, the prophet, came and told him that you did wrong, he accepted completely. He accepted completely. Yeah, very good. Excellent.
Who asked that question?
Aditya.
Where's she from?
I don't know. I forget.
Okay.
I thought we had free will so God can know who we are. We have free will. In times of the Holy Temple, free will was not was lesser free will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Less free will in the times of Holy. By the way, thank you for bringing that up. Times of the Holy Temple, first temple, even more, there was less free will because God's presence was much more palpable than in the second Holy Temple. But there was also palpable, right? Then comes exile, last 2,000 years. But even then, if you lived 500 years ago in a ghetto in Europe, right? A Jewish ghetto that's where Jews lived, right? How much, like came Friday night, how many people sinned and didn't keep Shabbos? Very few. What, you're going to leave the ghetto? Where are you going? The non-Jews ain't taking you in. Not the Muslims, not the Christians, right? Neither of them. Unless you converted. But let's say, you're not converting, but Shabbos, So you were kind of compelled to keep Shabbos. That's the only world you knew. You lived in a ghetto. Right?
So it's a good influence.
That's not the point. Yes, that's not the point I'm going to make, though. I'm just trying to show the difference of being compelled. So there you're compelled because you're restricted and restricted in your ghetto, right? So come Shabbos, all there is Shabbos for you, right?
The Holy Temple.
Right. So, well, not as much as the Holy Temple because there is more palpable the presence of God. Here, it's like there's nowhere else to go, and this is the only life I know of being in the ghetto, living a Jewish life, right? So it's not because it's palpable and real. maybe it's not, right? Spring forward to today, Friday night. Who's compelled to keep Shabbos? No one's compelled. On the contrary, there's so many competing things. We don't live in a ghetto anymore. We have so many choices to make. There's so much out there that is, is trying to get at us and trying to, to get at us and to get our eyeballs, attached to, whether it's on your smartphone, whether it's on television, whether it's Netflix, whether it's going out to the bar Friday night, whatever it is. There's plenty of things out there, right? So for the Jew to choose Shabbos is a real choice. It's a real choice. Today more than ever, even more than 40 years ago. It was even more compelling to keep a Jewish life than today. There's nothing that compels you except the choice that you make. Right? That's the point. That's where I was going with this. So I'm just giving the extremes even now, right? So just to appreciate the distinction. That's why we're living in a world today that there's more tshuva that's being done today than ever before. More tshuva. Why? Because tshuva means you're making the choice. You're choosing that you want to get from, connected to God rather than being compelled. If you're being compelled, then that's not real tshuva. Tshuva is you're returning, you're choosing and wanting this. So we live in a time now more than ever before. All right, amazing folks. Okay, more on this to come, God willing. But next is Rambam. Beautiful, wonderful. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad, Zurich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. An amazing, great day. See you.